Welcome back guys to another Total War video. Total War has released another development video for Medieval 3, this time titled Building Medieval 3, the campaign map and civic development. In the video we are joined by Leif, the game director, the creative director, and Paul, who is the game director, and Josh, who by the way does a great job hosting the stream. They are very clear that this is early development and that we shouldn't draw firm conclusions yet, especially when it comes to the visual side of things, like the UI for example. So just keep that in mind guys. With that being said, I want to quickly break down the key takeaways from this development video that I personally found really interesting. Takeaway 1 is about the scale and sense of space. So the overall landmass on the campaign map is said to roughly be comparable to the one in Total War Attila. But despite that, it's very clear that the sense of scale is much larger. One thing that really stood out here is how armies appear much smaller in relation to the map. But it's further emphasized when the developers talk about the vastness of space. For example, how ruling Iberia should feel like ruling almost a self-contained world. This is something they admit hasn't always been pulled off very well in previous titles, or hasn't been as well represented as more correct, I think, with Napoleon being mentioned as one of the examples. Medieval 3 seems to put a much stronger emphasis on distance, space, and regional identity. Takeaway number 2 is a more interactive campaign map. Medieval 3 is moving away from the province system we know from games like Rome 2 and Attila. Instead, we're getting single regions with rural developments within its borders. This allows for far more flexibility. You're no longer locked into rigid regional slots. Instead, you decide how much and where you want to develop. The developer shows an example where things like ports can be placed freely where you want them, and rather than just being locked into a fixed location. Overall, this feels like a shift towards more organic and hands-on campaign map, where development choices matter much more than just filling predefined slots. Takeaway number 3 is the population as one of the mechanics. Population is briefly discussed, and they do mention that it will likely get its own dedicated stream further down the road. Regions will have actual population numbers. Nobles, townfolks, peasants, all represented numerically. But when you raise an army, these soldiers are drawn directly from the population. You're no longer just spawning units out of thin air, you're pulling people from the society. The number of nobles, for example, will directly impact on how many elite or noble units you can recruit. And this naturally creates knock-on effects. Fewer people means lower income basically, weaker economies, and harder choices for the player. I find this so much more interesting, and they further emphasize that other things like religion and culture within the population will also influence the options you have. So it seems like they're adding several strategic layers when it comes to the population mechanic. It will be very interesting to see more of this. Takeaway number 4 is the taxation and regional wealth, also briefly discussed. But one thing here is that instead of income simply being a percentage modifier like we are used to, we have wealth accumulated or generated from a region, and then the taxations is a percentage drawn from that wealth, right? But the wealth is kind of a fixed number based on how you have developed your province. Now it kind of accumulates wealth, and it's stored over time, almost like a regional treasury or a piggyback, I think, the word they mention. So when you tax a region, you will draw directly from that stored wealth. Tax too aggressively and you can actually drain or possibly even bankrupt a region, leaving it unable to support armies in prolonged wars. So this creates a much stronger link between long-term planning, economic health, and military ambition. So this approach is vastly different from what we're used to, and a very welcome one. One thing I really want to highlight as well is that I really like the new approach to this level of transparency. Throughout the video, developers repeatedly reference questions posted directly to the community forums, and they actively invite feedback on systems that's still being designed. So this genuinely feels like an approach to bring the community into the development process, not just for marketing, but for shaping mechanics early on. And it actually reminds me a lot of how Slavic Magic developed Madden, where ideas and feedback from the community directly influenced the direction of the game. Whether or not every suggestion makes it in, this level of openness is honestly refreshing, and it gives me more confidence that of the direction that Medieval 3 is heading. That's all for this one, guys. I plan to continue summarizing these development videos into shorter, more digestible breakdowns for those of you who want the key information without watching the full streams. If you want the full context, I highly recommend watching the full original video in its entirety. If you found this summary useful, like really helps, and make sure to subscribe for more Total War content, for Christ's sake. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.